Yeah, I think you have to have those conversations well before you would ever even consider saying, "Hey, we'd like to perhaps partner." And that's that vulnerable thing where you have to have honest and open and transparent conversations. And I love to joke about a little bit in that period. We say, when we get on the other side of this, we want to make sure we still like each other and that we want to have fun and do these things together because
Right.
the worst thing that can happen is everybody ends on the other side of it and everybody's super salty about one thing or another. And the only way you combat that is having that super transparent communication and you have those tough conversations at a time about, what is it specifically that you genuinely enjoy doing and what do you want to make sure you continue to do as we go forward and what's really bogging you down and challenging you from a time and retention perspective. And if we could do these three things, geez, would you be able to be this far ahead? And more often than not, people say, wow, that would be amazing. And, we put a plan in place well before we'd ever get to that point.
Hello, and welcome to the Elevator Careers Podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group. I am your host, Matt Allred. In this podcast, we talk to the people whose lives and careers are dedicated to the vertical transportation industry to inform and share lessons learned, building upon the foundation of those who have gone before to inspire the next generation of elevator careers. Today our guest is Ed Stachowiak, Chief Operating Officer at Axxiom Elevator. Ed started his career as a sales rep with Otis Elevator in Syracuse, New York, where he learned and grew rapidly. In 2023, Ed became one of the founders of Axxiom Elevator with a vision to become the elevator service provider of choice. Ed believes personal and business growth is not easy. It takes a lot of courage to have honest and open conversations, but it's essential to see your blind spots and grow effectively. This is part 2 of the interview with Ed. In part 1, we discussed his early career. Today, we will be discussing the challenges and learnings of starting a new business. So let's spend a few minutes, talking about starting a new business. And I'm curious, what was it that motivated you, or the spark that said, "Hey, I want to create something new"?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think it really comes down to a couple different things. One, having seen and been a part of a lot of private equity backed or founder led businesses and seeing how exciting it is to be a part of those. I guess that would probably be the first thing. And the second is, there's a portion of the industry that I believe really values customer service, communication, quality work, call it the commitment to excellence, and really being, really out there seeking, I guess I would say, they call it the elevator service provider of choice.
Right.
Uh, in what otherwise in most markets is seen as the sea of sameness. And, when you do market research and market study, you see that use case come up and those kind of comments come up kind of over and over again. And so, I think seeing that portion of call it an underserved market was really eye-opening and what I thought was exciting and was certainly an opportunity for us to really leverage call it the core principles that we've just been talking about, people and
Sure.
customers and perhaps adding a little bit of systems and technology and process and doubling down on things like safety and the core culture.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about this underserved segment. What is it that kind of creates that, drives that, and what is that opportunity as you see it? Is there a big market, as it were?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's ever not been there. I think it's always been there. And I think it's really just, the evolution of a life cycle of an elevator coupled with, what people are seeing or perceiving in their personal lives as the benchmark for customer service or customer satisfaction. In my career, we saw things like, the Ritz-Carlton and Amazon one day delivery and the pace or the acceleration of change and the subsequent expectations that came along with that were so
Right.
massive that what people are seeing call it their day-to-day lives or in a B2C type capacity is now the expectation in many B2B environments. And so
Right.
I think that challenge kind of pulls through and as a result of that in our industry what would be reasonable customer commonplace everything from response times to
Sure.
how fast you return an email or a phone call has all changed in a relatively short amount of time. And so I don't know if it's necessarily what's driving it in the industry. I think it's more macroeconomic forces and just the expectations, call it from a nationwide or just from a cultural standpoint across the country. And
So,
as a result of it, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I'm just going to try to clarify. I think what I'm hearing you say is, let's say 10, 20 years ago, before we had overnight delivery from, Amazon to groceries to instant messaging. I mean, there was an allowable time of reality. Hey, give me
Mhm.
some time and then I'll show up. And now it's like we're just expecting everything like right now.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're speaking to?
Yeah. It's just it's the on-demand culture that we thrive in today. And so, I think a portion of that, or that's one of the drivers of why you're seeing, customers that are seeking alternative potential solutions to everything from elevator service. But I think they're looking for that across their entire building portfolio, not just for elevators, but for really all of the necessary trades or suppliers that they're partnering with. I think you've also seen a surge. I think it really started in the early 2000s where supply chain became a critical component to companies. You saw it in everything from food
Sure.
manufacturing. Everything was focused on cost reduction
Just
and
in time kind of thinking, right? Of
just in time and at the expense of kind of all other things. It was a focus on profits.
sure.
And then, that was happening well before I think it ever maybe impacted the elevator industry. But you've seen kind of that counter culture to it where, if you continue with kind of the food thing, you know, brands like Whole Foods popping up, where people are saying, no, we want to focus on quality. We want to focus on, the customer experience. We want to focus on positive outcomes for our customers and our employees. Um, and I think, a lot of those ideals are what is represented in the independent elevator community to a
Right.
certain degree.
Right.
And so, focusing on those things and making them really your core competencies are really, I think, what you're seeing define that segment of the business, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah. So is that you had mentioned, and I guess part of my question about what was it that motivated you? Was it just kind of seeing those pieces that made you say, hey, I want to dive into that and see what kind of impact I can make?
Yeah. I mean, I think the ultimate goal is always, do we believe that we can genuinely delight our customers? And what's it going to take to be able to do that?
Right.
And I think when really building out a business case and a thesis and really looking at what would make sense and how you would actually go and put a strategic plan in place and then the subsequent tactical actions in order to execute upon said strategic plan, it became very apparent that, this wasn't going to be difficult to do. The harder part is finding key partners and folks that share that same vision and really truly want to double down on, you know, strong communication, two-way communication with customers, having a commitment to quality and genuinely celebrating the successes of their people and taking things like safety and putting it at the forefront. Uh, and I think, generating a business plan is easy, but really creating that culture and making those pillars your day to day is a whole nother thing. And so, really out of the gate saying, no, these are our core commitments. These are the things that we're going to hold true
Right.
and above all else, even above profit for sure. Um, is really important. And I think having the opportunity to do that was super refreshing and was really one of the leading reasons why I
Yeah.
wanted to jump in with uh with Axiom and really start this company.
Yeah. And I hear you kind of harking back to your initial days in the industry and really saying, wow, there's a family in this office and this
Yeah,
town, and they care about me and I care about them, and we're going
yeah,
to succeed together. And so that I think there's certainly a lot of I talk to people all the time that I'm just looking for the right culture. I'm looking for
mhm,
the
yeah,
right place to be. Have you found people resonating with that message as you've, I mean,
yeah,
obviously you're
yeah, yeah,
you're in business, so I mean,
yeah, yeah. We're definitely in business. I think for a while, I think there were companies that were looking for a certain persona for hiring, which you're certainly well aware of. That was all about business results.
mhm,
And I would say when we're interviewing folks, certainly their ability to deliver on their commitments and do the things they say they're going to do is important. But I think the things that are just important to us is how are they going to be able to lead and influence a team, or how are they going to engage with customers, and what are their key attributes that are really going to enhance our brand, becomes super important. And so as we've been partnering with businesses, we've been very fortunate to have a tremendous number of people joining the organization through those partnerships that value the same things that we do. And in most instances, they've wanted to do what they're doing and take it even further. They just haven't had whatever it may be, one or two things that were required in order to do that. Maybe it was capital, maybe it was a little bit free time, who knows what
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is, but now they're able to, and they're able to run and do the things that they know genuinely are going to enhance customer outcomes, and then drive customer retention, all the things that we care about on the back end.
Yeah. So tell me about that, because I know you've been able to acquire
Yeah.
multiple, companies in multiple locations. What are some of the benefits somebody would receive? And you've
Yep.
spoken to a little bit, right? If I'm a single owner, I've only got so many resources. I've only got so much time, so much energy, and the idea of growing beyond where I'm at may just seem overwhelming. So what is it that you bring to
Yeah.
that party?
Well, I guess uh, a quick shout out to all of the, call it, small and medium business owners out there. I mean, it's a gauntlet each and every day. You're responsible for it all, and oftentimes, even though it's a small industry, we're forced to make decisions in a vacuum because we don't have
Sure,
access to a tremendous wealth of knowledge on how to handle kind of the things that are outside of our core competencies, which is elevators. And so,
sure.
I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. I would say the answer to your question is it really depends on what things the business feels like they really need. But one of the most resounding, call it, reoccurring things that I hear from people is, if I just had more time.
Sure.
And there's a tremendous amount of things that are, call it, vying for folks' time and attention, but a lot of the back office stuff seems to be, in most instances, the thing that chews up the most time, whether it's, call it, the HR related things, insurance, payroll, I don't know, what else, taxes, accounting, finance.
Yeah,
Uh,
like
that's
accounts
just a,
receivable. I mean,
yeah,
we
it's
need
a
to get paid.
tremendous amount of time, and when you start a company, you're always excited about, call it, the frontline business, and excelling perhaps in the field. You forget that you have to manage your books, and find insurance, and do kind of all the behind the scenes blocking and tackling. But that stuff just comes right off of folks' plate on day one, and if they so choose, and we are able to really help them navigate that. So that frees them up. And then I think really it comes down to everything from technology, tools, if in instance where they need systems or they want systems, which really enables them to have a better understanding of the business, which everybody
Right,
says, I don't need that stuff. And then they see kind of how it works and like, wow, I wish I would have had that forever ago. Uh,
right.
but I think those are things, and really kind of going back to that supply chain component, and commercial growth. It's, supplier management has been mission critical, especially through this post-COVID or COVID period, and making sure you're managing your projects properly and managing your supplier relations properly. I think for a long time, not just in our industry, but just in industry in general, there was this uh, procurement person LinkedIn profile that blatantly would say, I'll save you 20 to 25% no matter what, and that was their
Right.
claim to fame and at all costs. But I think there's a better way to do it than just brute force, and it's really by driving connectivity with your suppliers and building relationships and having strategic backup plans across different component or sub-assembly type processes. But that's not something you can do if you're running a small business without a whole lot of help.
Right,
And
right.
so
And like you say, time that you just don't have. So
yeah,
whether it's new systems, I mean, one of the things as a small business owner myself, it's like, hey, you can do, this and add AI, interfaces. And I'm like, okay, just the time to research it. I don't even
yeah,
have time to think about it a
right,
lot of times. And so,
right.
yeah, I can hear that echoing across, a business owner that, wow, if you can just take that off my mind and off my plate and do
Mhm.
that and just allow me to run my business the way I enjoy running it, then
Yeah.
yeah, that's compelling. And how would you describe kind of the partnership opportunity? Is it excuse me, is it essentially that you um, hey, business owner, you're running your business and we're kind of taking the back end, or what? Describe
Yeah.
that to me a little bit.
I mean, I think the answer is we have a significant amount of flexibility. I think if you start with the end in mind with, look, our mission is to be the elevator company of choice in every market that we serve. And when there's people we see that are super close to being that company, but they just need a little bit of a catalyst or a little bit of an infusion of whatever it is, that subject matter expertise on whatever it is, artificial general intelligence or systems or tooling, or perhaps a little bit of capital to kickstart a portion of their business. Those things come into play. I think there's also, because of just the nature of the aging population in the markets that we're operating in today, there's a considerable amount of growth and an influx of people from the north to the southern, call
Sure.
it, swath of the United States. And so business has been significant, call it post-COVID, just based on population flows and population trends. And even if you had a sleepy business, regardless of industry, you've seen probably a significant surge,
Sure.
and that influx of business, whether you were hunting for it or not, comes with a whole lot of other challenges. And so while your business may have been good and you're able to manage, call it, the volume in the day to day with an ad hoc process or without, call it, some of that rigor, today, if your business is 2, 3, 4x, whether that be on any business line, it becomes incredibly difficult to manage.
Right.
Uh, and a lot of people don't feel comfortable and they struggle and they really need help. And so, I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunities. And I think you also see people that say, geez, I see other organizations around me having wild success and I don't know how they're doing it. I'm either getting later in my career and I want to make sure that I set up my team for success upon,
Right.
my exit into retirement in whatever time frame. And or you see people earlier, middle in their career, where they say, geez, I'd really like to get that infusion of expertise and knowledge and skill and ability. But regardless of the reason, I think it's truly a partnership. And I go back to, what I said earlier, you got to get a little vulnerable through that process. And I think you have to on both sides of
Right.
that discussion. And, I like to share exactly what we've talked about, why we do this. And, I think the folks that, genuinely have bought into that are the ones that we've partnered with. And it's not just about making a quick buck. It's about delivering on our commitments and taking care of our people and making sure everybody gets home safe. And even if that means we got to spend more money in order to do
Right.
that. And so, I think it's exciting to see, and it's refreshing, I think, certainly, for a lot of people probably to hear that, that does exist. And when you're operating in that small business environment, you probably don't hear that message very often, outside of maybe the four walls of the
Right.
folks
Right.
most.
Well, when I hear you talking about, partnership, it's different in my mind from, I just hear people, well, I think they're going to sell and I'm going to have to jump ship, right? There's this fear, I think, in a
Yeah,
lot of people's minds of
yeah,
what does this mean? And is this going to destroy our little family that we've created? And
yeah,
am I going to be able to trust my boss? And so, how has, I don't know, what's kind of because again, I guess back to the partnership part,
yeah,
right? If the owner stays on, but he now has time to mentor. Talk to me a little bit through how you address
yeah.
that fear.
Yeah, I think you have to have those conversations well before you would ever even consider saying, "Hey, we'd like to perhaps partner." And that's that vulnerable thing where you have to have honest and open and transparent conversations. And I love to joke about a little bit in that period, where say, when we get on the other side of this, we want to make sure we still like each other and that we want to have fun and do these things together, because
Right.
the worst thing that can happen is everybody ends on the other side of it and everybody's super salty about one thing or another. And the only way you combat that is having that super transparent communication, and you have those tough conversations at a time about what is it specifically that you genuinely enjoy doing and what do you want to make sure you continue to do, as we go forward, and what's really bogging you down and challenging you from a time and retention perspective. And if we could do these three things, geez, would you be able to be this far ahead? And more often than not, people say, wow, that would be amazing. And, we put a plan in place well before we'd ever get to that point. And that's really, been exciting. And you say, what's one of the most, call it, exciting things on a day to day for me? I think it's watching people's careers, you really take off and see them learn and grow and maximize their potential is probably the first thing. But the second is really helping folks call it all along the journey. Because like I said, I think, the business is the business and it'll be successful if you do call it what we're talking about here.
Right.
The fundamental building blocks of how you run a successful business. And that doesn't mean you won't have challenges, but if you do those more often than not, things turn out pretty darn good. But I think it really comes down to the people, especially in our industry. And so, those relationships and the fact that the folks that are working in the field or perhaps in the office have been reporting to them for quite some time. And then you have, myself or someone else come in that's an unknown quantity, perhaps, that can be a little scary. I like to joke and say I'm 175 pounds soaking wet. I don't know how much damage I really can do here, guys, but I'll try my best. And we always have a good laugh about that. But at the end of the day, it's truly a partnership, and you have to talk through those things.
Yeah, I think it's super valuable to have that, like you say, get vulnerable, have that very open conversation. Here's what we're about. If
Yeah,
it lines up, great. If it doesn't, great. I
yeah,
mean, you told me some time ago that a lot of these partnerships, they'll, reinvest back in the company, stay with the company. And in that way, and I think that's what you were speaking to a minute ago about, watch their career blossom, grow. They're now part of something bigger with some skin in the game.
yeah,
And let's, you know,
yeah, yeah. I mean, like, look, it's I think alignment on outcomes and the common goal really helps accelerate the partnership.
mhm.
And we're very fortunate to have partnered with Gage Capital, a fantastic firm out of Dallas. Unbelievable group of people have provided a tremendous amount of insight and really support the business. They're business operators in and of themselves, and that's part of their core DNA, which is perhaps a little bit different than many organizations that operate in their space. But they ask the questions about how is that going to impact the business in the long term, and is that the right thing for the customer, and let's make sure we're taking care of our people if we're going to make these decisions in one way or another. And when you have that type of relationship and support, the world becomes your oyster. And that really translates all the way through that process of potential partnership. And so the compensation component or the reinvestment component is by no means a requirement, but more often than not, when we sit down and we have a conversation a little bit different than this one, but some of the same
Right.
merits are discussed, you find people certainly leaning in and really wanting to get on board because they see the opportunity with the business, and they know what their people are capable of with perhaps a little bit of enhanced tools or techniques.
Yeah. So, we've talked about time, but how would you say you help companies, scale, grow, and what are some of the I guess the additional maybe tools you provide that if you don't have as a small business owner, you might be left behind.
Yeah, I guess without giving away the farm on, call it the theory, method, and madness on how to wildly scale a company.
Sure.
I think every company has a little bit of a different DNA, and I think it really comes from who that founder was. Did they come from the field and they have a much stronger or robust technical skill set where perhaps the finance components or the commercial growth strategy components was kind of a secondary or a learned trait kind of later on through that process. And so it really comes down to what's the DNA and the core competencies of the business. And what you see is there's some incredibly savvy companies out there that have either hired for that skill set or had someone else that has joined as a part of their respective organization. But the technology components right now are moving at light speed, and everything from you had mentioned AI for a small business owner, it's daunting, and the ability to evaluate, call it outbound or digital tools, has been constantly evolving space. I think anybody in, call it a decision making capacity, has feels like they've been inundated or bombarded with people kind of doing cold outreach or knocking on doors. And those are very challenging ways to grow a partnership or a business with a customer. And so you have to get really creative, and every market's a little unique, and what would work on, call it the East Coast, maybe wasn't going to work the same way on the West Coast, and so it has to be very focused. But you really would sit down and just like you would a long time ago, say what is it that these customers truly care about, and how can we partner with them to win, just like we partnered with potentially these folks. I mean, it's really a reoccurring theme, that you have mutually beneficial outcomes. There's certainly a value to the service that, elevator companies provide. And oftentimes it's really hard to articulate that, as, you've seen that attempt for commoditization, and
Sure.
call it all professional building or professional construction trades. And so, it's one part storyteller and two, taking credit for the hard work and the successes that you're having, and leveraging, the people that do truly value what you've been able to do, I guess, at a super high level.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. And I understand you can't, give away the secret sauce per
Yeah.
se, but I
Yeah.
do see, especially as small business owners, there's a lot of, like I say, competing technologies. There's
Yeah.
new ways to leverage your offering, or make you
Mhm.
more efficient in what you are offering, so that you're staying,
Yeah.
competitive in the market. So, um, very cool, very cool. Well, we're about out of time, so I wanted to just ask you what, I guess, just give me maybe some words of wisdom for that you want to share with holders in the industry.
Yeah.
Something maybe that you're witnessing in your experience.
Yeah. You can take that in a lot of different directions, I guess, but I guess a couple of things that really come to mind are one, don't be scared to invest in yourself, whether that's from a learning perspective, or, like we talked about, taking on roles that enhance your ability for perhaps the future. I think, the second piece is, like we talked about, you have to be having those honest, open, and candid conversations with those around you, in order to really help navigate the day to day, and to build trust and credibility with the folks that are either sitting alongside of you, above you, or perhaps if you have the privilege of leading them on a day-to-day basis. And I think really the third thing is, it isn't just about sales or customer experience, about operations. It truly comes down to the interrelatedness of all of the disciplines within a core business. And so, when you talk about how do you grow and scale a business, the first tendency is to talk about how you grow and scale business from a tactical sales execution standpoint. But the reality is, it's really all of the things that are standing behind that process that are mission critical, just as much as, the day-to-day tasks of a person in selling capacity. And so, it really comes down to, what is the proper way to grow and scale the business in each and every one of the disciplines within the respective business. And I think that is truly the challenge. And based on
Yeah.
your DNA, and where you came up in the ranks, those things perhaps are in your blind spots. And so I would say that that kind of last piece is, you have to figure out ability to be able to see in your blind spots, which is incredibly difficult, which goes back to the people and the people around you, and having that vulnerable process to get a better appreciation for where you can improve. So
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
If you got the team you can trust, and they can help you see those
Yeah.
blind spots, then there's nothing you can't get through as a team. So
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Ed, thank you so much for being with me today.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. It was fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and I wish you the best as you continue to build the business.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Elevator Careers Podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group, a leader in elevator industry recruiting. You can check us out online at elevatorcareers.net. Please subscribe, and until next time, stay safe.